Dave Niehaus there, but memorable nonetheless as we welcome in Larry Stone of the Seattle Times, also a co-author of a new Edgar Martinez autobiography that's coming out. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's called Edgar, an Autobiography. Larry, how did this all come about and how long did it take to write?
Well, Aaron, it's something I've been kicking around for a few years, and the time just seemed right with him nearing the end of his Hall of Fame eligibility. So I just approached him in spring training in 2018 in Peoria. I just said, I think it's a good time to do an autobiography. Would you be interested? And just on a side field there. And he just thought about it for a second. He said, okay.
Do you know, had any other writers approached him about this idea?
I think he had been approached a few times, but I think he realized that, you know, it was a good time,
right,
with the potential of him going into the Hall of Fame. So throughout the 2018 season, he was the hitting coach then. Whenever the team was at home, once a week, I'd go to his house and sit in his living room and just talk to him about his life, and kind of did it chronologically. Took the whole baseball season, and I wrote some of it as I went along, but mostly at the end of the baseball season, I took about 3 months. I was still working for the Seattle Times, but I wrote the book and turned it in early January.
Talk about a crunch during football season, too. Also writing this book as well. What was the best part about working with Edgar on this book?
I think the best part was just being with Edgar and seeing what I've known Edgar for, close to 20 years, but got to see him in a different light. And just getting to know him more and learning about his life and the creative challenge of turning it into a book.
Without giving too much away, what are some of the favorite parts that you learned about Edgar and his life that you maybe didn't know beforehand?
Yeah, I knew about his upbringing, but there's some elements to it in Puerto Rico. He lived with his grandparents, and at one point his parents got back together and wanted Edgar and his brother and his sister to move to New York and live with them, and Edgar just did not want to go, and he hid on the roof of their home and laid flat on the roof for an hour while everybody was looking for him because it was time to go back to New York, and he just flat refused to go, and finally they left without him. He stayed there. If he'd gone to New York, he would almost certainly not have had his baseball career, because his brother, who did go, had been a baseball player, and he never played again in New York. So there's many points along his career where if things had broken a different way, he would not have had the career he had. And I'll go into depth on that. His eye condition, people know about, but I don't think they know really what he went through to play every day. The mental aspect of the game and his mental approach. And one more thing I'll just mention is he did not really, when Lou Piniella told him that he was going to be a DH in '95, which ended up being the best thing that happened to his career, he was very resistant at first.
Really?
And I go into, I tell about that story about how Lou had to convince him to be a DH and how he did not want to do it, but he eventually acquiesced and of course, became the best in history.
Yeah, it certainly worked out. You have a book signing coming up with Edgar this Wednesday night in Bellevue at the Barnes & Noble, 7 o'clock, is that correct?
Correct.
You had one earlier this week as well. What was your favorite part about that?
That was at Elliott Bay. There was a tremendous turnout. I sat right next to Edgar as this line of people went through, and I got to hear, it was just really kind of touching, person after person telling Edgar how much he meant to them, how he made them love baseball, how he was their favorite player, how he did it the right way, and they'll never forget that. And almost everybody, it seemed, said they were going to Cooperstown to watch him, so I don't know how they're going to fit all the Mariner fans along with all the Mariano Rivera fans.
Right.
But just to see just what Edgar means to people, I'm sure he gets that every day, but I hadn't experienced in quite that bulk before with several hundred people, one after another, just telling him in awe of the guy and telling him what he meant to them.
Cooperstown's going to be awesome between him and Mariano Rivera, and Edgar essentially owned Mariano at the plate too, so it's kind of cool seeing those two go in together. He was obviously a legend. We saw the double at the top. Give me your honest opinion. If that double doesn't happen, is he a Hall of Famer #1, and is the Mariner lore around Edgar Martinez as strong as it is today?
To answer your second question, no, I don't think it is. I think that's what sealed his stature as the Mariner, because that moment is still the greatest moment in franchise history. But I do think he still would have been a Hall of Famer, because it took him 10 years, and by now I think a lot of the national writers, the memory of that game has faded. If you're a writer in Philadelphia or something, it's not as strong as it is here. I think he got in on his own merits. It took a long time, but eventually, I think his stats spoke for themselves, and I think that would have been the case even without that double.
Larry Stone of the Seattle Times, co-authoring Edgar Martinez, an autobiography. Great Father's Day gift, by the way. It's next week, and you can get the book online already on Amazon.
Yeah,
I believe,
and it's already in a few bookstores. I think Barnes & Noble has it. So
the book signing on Wednesday night. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We'll be back with more Queued Up Sports next.